I'm Jeanette Agnrud. I am head of communications at the Swedish Association of Communication Professionals.
All right. As I'm an old market researcher, I love this asking questions. How many of you people knew what social influencers was before you came here? Please raise a hand. Was it at about 30%? How many do you think of the marketing managers or digital people out there know what it is? Quick guess. Nobody? No. I got a question here. What defines influencer marketing? And you, Nicolas, you're working with it. What actually defines influencer the best way? Can you please describe the question? What is a social influencer? And is it good enough that you're from Stockholm working in a specific field, or is it that you mention a lot of things, or is it that you're accurate, or what is this actually that defines so everybody understands what you get when you're into the field? I think we should actually clarify what it is, and everybody can have. You've been working with it for some time as well, so please, everybody who can.
Do I start? Okay. Well, when we talk about influencers, we like to use the definition of the word of mouth association, WOMA, they call themselves. And they call an influencer is someone who has the capability to make people think what they would otherwise not have thought, or do something that they would otherwise not have done. And I think what it means is that an influencer is someone who can have an impact on other people. I think that's our definition. I don't know. You guys, what do you think?
Yeah, I would agree. And if you look at the online space, I would add that, of course, that person needs to have some sort of online presence. I think a common misconception is that an influencer, you're automatically an influencer if you have a lot of reach online. And that's definitely not enough. It's a combination of reach, relevance, and credibility. So it's not always the case that the blogger with the most readers or the Twitter account with the most followers is the biggest influencer. But I would agree with your definition. It's a person who holds the potential or the possibility to actually influence other people's opinions and behaviors about things.
Anybody else wants to elaborate the question, or is it good enough? I saw in your presentation there, I had a good thing that you had engagement rate, and you have that you have the right type of impressions. How do you pull this apart? How do you value the different things? You want to have reach, and you want to have the right type of reach. Where do you pull the string?
I think that also varies. I think it's very common in the marketing world to only value a high number in terms of impression, which I think is a mistake. I think what's happening now, which is good, is that we get better and better at actually evaluating the impressions. Anything from an influencer saying something to their audience, which in my sort of world then means that will reach a relevant target group. But also, social media ads today, where you can actually target people based on their interests and their lifestyles. So it's hard to say where do you actually draw the difference between relevant and not relevant traffic, but it's key to actually focus on it and make sure that we don't only value a high number. So for instance, the case I showed where we had roughly 700,000 impressions. I know that most of those will be high relevant because they came from people who talk about wine and food. Yeah. If I instead would use a banner ad and place it on a random website and get 700,000 impressions, it would probably not be as relevant. It's still sort of a tricky landscape to navigate, but things are changing, and it's just key to keep that in mind.
Do you feel that you can cheat the score? I talked to you before that because you have the scoring system. Do you think people can actually want to crack the code, or is it possible?
Definitely possible. People do cheat a lot in this industry. Let's be honest about it. People do cheat, and there are companies who are, basically selling bad traffic. You could easily get like 1,000 new Twitter followers if you want. You can definitely get 10,000 views on YouTube if you want. But it's bad traffic.
Yeah.
But people make money doing that. So that's one of the problems in our industry, definitely.
Yeah. Nicolas, can you elaborate if there's some type of way you can actually take care of it in the system?
Yes, I mean, I think what Nils was saying is that the capability of people to generate engagement is one of the key criteria. And that's obviously one of the key way that you can measure whether people have a real following or not. So do their content actually create real action and engagements? So I think that's an interesting KPI to really look at when you try to understand the impact that people can have. Jeanette?
I was just, perhaps I'm being very naive, but I'd like to think that an organization that relies on fake engagement is not going to last very long.
Yeah.
It's not really a truly communicative organization. It's not really driving sales. It's not really driving engagement. And eventually that's going to evaporate all your brand and all your trust. I know that probably is sort of some utopia, but I think we're getting there.
Yeah, and if I can just add to that, I agree. I think we're in a phase still where a lot of people do not fully know how good online marketing works, and a lot of people perhaps not feeling familiar with the space as a whole will just focus on getting a big number and showing that to a boss somewhere, and then perhaps giving money to these types of organizations. But I agree, it's a problem that's gonna disappear in a couple of years. But right now we still have it.
It's adding to that thread as well. It's interesting. It's a problem that you have when you start planning. So how do you select maybe the channels or the people that you want to work with? To be honest, also brands have been cheating a lot. I mean, how many brands have actually bought fans for their Facebook page and actually have an engagement level that is less than 0.1%? So it's not just individuals or influencers. It's like brands themselves and marketing people themselves have been just cheating on the real attractiveness or engagement of their page. But I think this is reverts back, Peter, to the first question that you were asking. It's just like, how do you define influencers? So it's someone that has an impact. So, for example, when we made the ramp up to the event here and tried to communicate on the event, we know who has had most impact. So we know that the content shared by some people has more impact than others. And so Brit, for example, has been sharing on the event, and she's driven a huge amount of people to the website and to the events page. So I would argue somehow that in the context of that event, to use Fefe's element of context, Brit for me has been the most influential person tonight.
Okay.
I got a question for you, Brit. From your introduction there, you said it's all about involving people and you have to take care of people. Do you think that when you target people, do you think you can hurt? Do you understand what I mean? That you can actually, if you start influencing people, do you think that because you have to take care of your social network? Or is it, do you think there's some issue that could cause a problem, or you only see possibilities with the influencer marketing? That's my question. Tough one.
No, but the key to be successful is to be very careful on who you select, and that it is a true relation that both party benefits from. So the key issue is to actually be very good at selecting those people and do that with, what's the English word for fingertoppskänsla? Sorry? Ja, und ich bin Deutsch. Fingerspitzgefühl. So you really it's a craft, and it's a quite intriguing craft actually. And what I would say that when using I haven't looked into Traackr before I came here today, but one key element is really to be able to spot the coming ambassadors and influencers. What you do in Sweden generally is that you it's a small community, so you know the ones that would be the strong influencers. But I think the really intriguing part is that you can see the up and coming influencers, and you can create such strong bonds to them to really be the one acknowledging them and involving them in what you do.
Instead of those ones that already gone over the peak.
Yes, exactly. Skip me, choose somebody else.
Jeanette, you're about the measuring. How do you measure the return of investment on social media? This is like please give me the skinny.
If I got a penny for every time I get asked the question, do you have an officially approved method? I always answer that would be like hiding away the Holy Grail. I actually had a conversation the other week. We're about to launch a big research project and about communicative organizations, and I begged the professors to make one of the goals to take to research a method for measuring and evaluating communicative organization. And they say no, we don't do it that way, because communications is not like medicine, for example, where you try out the medicine in the laboratory before you apply it to the patient, whereas in communications you apply it to the patient first, and then you have the laboratory find out why the patient was killed or got better. As I get asked this question a lot by our members, obviously they're expectant about all the possibilities that are out there, but I also have great concerns about not having the skills necessary to meet these expectations. And I think a bit unnecessarily, because we've been actually doing measuring and evaluation of communications for quite a long time, but we seem to think that the numbers we come up with are not valid. Especially not when the CFO comes along with their Excel sheets and bangs us on the head, and the things we come up with just doesn't seem solid compared to that. But I think we should not have such low self-confidence about our numbers. And since accountancy has been around for some 500 years, and we've been around for some 60, 70, I have.
Less than that.
So I hope we're getting there.
I have a question for Brit, Jeanette and Nils about the Swedish market. How do you think the Swedish market is understanding the force of social media? I know the media business, they're all about push media. They don't think that they actually have to be in social media because our take care of themselves. And you can see that Coca-Cola went with search, start selling the search beverage through social media. There was a storm, and then they got people who wanted to search, and then they will start selling by Amazon. So it's all a viral experiment from Coca-Cola. How ready is the Swedish market for going really social? And which businesses do you think are in the forefront and in the back?
If I get started, I'd say that Sweden is pretty much on the forefront of things. Yeah. And I definitely would say that a lot of Swedish brands and businesses are catching up with the social media way. So it's definitely, we see a lot of ad budgets going into social or digital to begin with, and then social. So also for us working on multiple markets, I would say Sweden is among the forerunners in that. And in terms of different types of businesses, I would say fast-moving consumer goods, any type of lifestyle-driven brand, and brands perhaps still targeting slightly younger audiences are ahead of the game, and a lot of industries that are perhaps seen as being slow movers in general, and perhaps who do not see themselves as communicating to individuals. I would say business to business in general is behind still in terms of grasping that their target groups are also social individuals living a digital life.
Of course. And do you see that Sweden is like a test market for companies abroad because we're very digital?
For some, yes.
Yeah.
Not for all, but we do see that with some clients that Sweden is sort of the first market they go to in terms of testing out social media marketing and influencer marketing.
Yeah. Jeanette and Brit, do you have anything you can add?
Just the fact that the view of Sweden as being in the forefront can sometimes sort of make you feel that, oh my God, I don't know this. I'm supposed to know this, and I don't. How can I possibly hide this fact away and sort of pretend that I actually know what I'm doing, and therefore not getting the education or the training that you need to be able, because you do need training and you do need education, and it's a skill and a craft, as Brit was saying. So it's sometimes a bit hämmande. Vad heter hämmande? Restricting. Thank you.
Yeah, I think so. Your question was if the Swedish market was
ready for the social media, and do they really understand the force that there's so many people. You can see that 2/3 of the Swedish people are in Facebook. Obviously, is media today.
And Facebook is the problem, or Instagram, because what you see is that you tend to evaluate these platforms in conjunction on how you see upon them. So if you think that Instagram is just a platform where you brag about your latest vacation, or at Facebook you just tell about the good stuff, then it's really hard to think strategically about these platforms. So our largest problem in regarding to the development of social media is that we do tend to make our personal views on every platform steer how we work with them strategically, which is so stupid. And it would be like me as a media strategist would only be giving advice on what papers to read based on my personal preferences, which would do me a very crappy media strategist. So that's really a strong problem, and that's linked to what you were saying, the need of education. And really you need to be able to grasp the aspect of the strong possibilities by one individual and the distribution power they have. And then another mistake we do is that we do tend to talk about the digital influencers like they only live digital. The word of mouth is still done in the huge part by us talking to each other. It's not so many people that are totally digital. No. They also, if you look on what you do during a day, you still talk to people, but you get the digital stuff that you carry further on. And if I should give two examples, I have to say the Swedish police, not only because I evaluated what they did in social media, and not only because they are here, but because they have done an absolutely amazing job that you can be inspired of. Their thorough process on how they made the Swedish police force ready to do that, and they rolled out 100 Facebook pages, over 100 Twitter accounts, and we do know that there are a lot of challenges linked to that. People have a strong opinion on the police force, but also a great need to give information, and so that's one good example. And then very current example is of course the political parties, and then I have some favorites, and then maybe I should mention the environmental party, and I don't have any links to that in ideology, whatever, yeah. You know. Political preferences. I'm a Norwegian citizen, so I didn't even vote, just to make that clear. But they have been very good at finding a way of being relevant and being able to lift in their politics when people were discussing their issues and so on. And also the feminist party that was almost able to reach the 4% level. And with small resources made a very good job to be present.
A huge return on investment for them.
Extremely, yes, yeah.
I would like to get some questions from the audience. I got so many questions I could sit here all day, but please.
Very good talks. I enjoyed all of it so far. My question is about using too many social medias, like websites and Pinterest and Facebook and Twitter and all of those. What do you think about using too much of it?
Your question is that you think people use too many?
No, it's more like how to kind of work with too many, or should I use all of them, or should I use like one and focus on that?
Yeah, if I get started, I'd say that if you can, you should use as many as possible that are relevant for your target group. It all comes down to resources. I mean, if you set up 20 different accounts and you can't keep up with them, then it's not a good idea. If you can, it can be a good idea because using different outlets means you can reach target groups in different places and perhaps even different target groups. And also from an overall digital point of view, having a strong social media presence in multiple outlets, multiple channels will also be good for your Google presence when people actually search for stuff. So if you can, it's good to be in multiple places, but of course you need to match it to where your target group actually spends their time and where they want to meet you, so to speak.
I totally agree on what you maybe should think and dare to do, because we do tend to do the same content in every channel, to have a clear channel strategy. If we choose Instagram, what should we do there? And maybe I dare you to decide at one word or at the most one sentence that really grasps what you want to do in Instagram or Facebook or Pinterest or whatever. Because that helps you, and be sure not to just put out the same content in all the channels. Then it helps you, and maybe decide, let's see what's most corporate and what's the least corporate, and then you would find that the most corporate would be LinkedIn and your Google Plus page, and the least corporate would be Instagram. And what do I want to do there then? So then you do channel strategy for the platforms.
Another? The police, do you have something you want to share? I heard it was a beautiful example.
Yeah, share of some of your challenges.
Yes, tell us something that really worked out, because it's really nice to hear.
Some of our biggest challenges right now is
can you pass the mic there?
Yeah, we have like 1 million followers and pretty much never paid for it. But as Brit said, we have 110 official police page around in Sweden with a quite local content. And we have 50 plus Twitter and only 3 Instagram accounts. But our biggest problem right now is how we get this together, how we can get hold of it, so we don't miss any interaction, because we have 100,000 interaction over the time.
So what's your problem? You want to measure it, or you want to?
Not so measuring, but more that because we're in government, we have by law, we have to answer all questions by law.
Yeah.
So our biggest problem is that since we have in a week, we probably have like 100,000 writing to us each week.
Yeah.
And we have to, it's pretty much Emma Silman there is sitting and asking and answering every questions. So she's real fast. But our biggest problem is how we can get a hold of all this information, because so many want to interact with us.
Yeah. I can pass it. I just have one question for you.
Yeah.
Do you see that the people help each other on the social media?
Yeah, a lot. And what we do there, we pretty much just go in, just as Daniel said. Okay. That's the right answer. So we confirm by the police that that's the right answer. So because we have a lot of wrong answers as well.
Okay, you get wrong information.
Yeah, so they get wrong information. But you're allowed to throw knives at in the city of Stockholm. But no, you're not. So we have to correct them. But our biggest problem is just to get how to not lose the interaction, not to lose the willingness to interact with us.
So that manage the social flow and answer.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah, in a way that ties back to the previous question of how many places should you be in. It's not an easy thing to solve. Today there are a lot of good tools for this, a lot of social media management tools. I don't know if you're using any of those, but that would be a starting point. Use a tool that will basically collect all of your social media presence into one tool with one login, where you can see all the interactions happening with you, and you can actually even sort of distribute the tasks to take care of that internally. So there are a number of those tools, Sprouter and HubSpot and a bunch of those. So I would say that's a starting point, but then of course having the staff to do it, and realizing that you need to keep the conversations going, or if people start asking you questions and you don't reply, that's going to be a problem for you. So it's not a quick fix, but at least tools are getting better and better at that problem, because it's a pretty fairly common problem.
What was the name of the tools that you talked about?
Sprouter is one of them. There are hundreds. Google social media management tools, and you'll find a bunch instead of me just saying a bunch of names.
I can throw in a question. I hope you can come with more questions. What are about the moral aspect of the social media? There's kids out there. How do you channel that you have? You had a wine question, and how do you see that people plus 18? You know.
Yeah, that's a tricky one. Of course, we as an agency are really focused on never communicating to kids, basically. In terms of the alcohol industry, especially here in Sweden, it's very, very restricted. So we need to give a lot of thought into everything we do. We basically do two things. When looking at what type of platforms we're on, we need to follow the 75% rule, which basically says that if 75% of the users of, let's say, Instagram or Facebook are of age, of legal drinking age, we can communicate on that platform. And the other one is to stay in touch. In Sweden, we have this guy called Alkoholgranskningsmannen. It's actually a person who's in charge of making sure that the alcohol industry stays within the rules and regulations for how to do marketing. So every time we do anything for a wine client or any type of spirits brand, we need to check with him first. So we actually tell him what we're about to do and get his input on that before launching anything. But it's the digital aspect of it is tricky, because on a lot of platforms you can fake your age. We can't really, I mean, if you go on Facebook and say you're 18 and you're not, we can't really see if that's correct or not. So, of course, any communication will reach people who are perhaps not of age, no matter how strictly you try to manage it. But at least we try to follow all the rules that are applicable.
Anybody else got a question here?
No, maybe someone of you.
Can I get the mic? Oh.
You mentioned about Sweden being like the center or the hub for the Nordic social media presence and digital presence. And I've been working for large companies here, and usually the headquarters is here in Sweden. And then we are forced to drive social media and digital communications from Sweden out to Finland, to Denmark, to Norway. And do you have any experience of this? Does it work well? What are the dangers of doing it? Do we really understand the other three countries, not only the languages? Sometimes it's a problem.
Someone here who can answer you.
We get it to the audience.
I work
Please,
I'm Philip. Me and Max here work for MTV, and we have we do social media and PR for 9 countries, in the Nordics as well, and in local languages. And the key is quite easy to have local staff, and that's what we have. So that's the short answer.
Did you go the wrong way in the beginning?
No.
You did it right from the beginning?
Yeah, because we have our websites in local languages, and we had those first. So the web editors also do the social media. Easy.
Okay. Anybody else? If I think maybe we should round up. If every one of you could give 1 or 2 tips, how should you make a successful social influencer impact? What do you do? Is it measurements? How do you get success in this business?
If I start, I would say listening. Make sure you actually take the time to get to know your target group and your influencers, and approach them like you would approach any friend. basically, and try to not think about the fact that you're trying to sell a product
Not push.
for a minute, but rather try to think about how do I build a relationship and provide value to this person.
I'd like to connect with what Nils just said, because what you want to achieve is a place in the value network where you're irreplaceable. Very few of us are really irreplaceable, but you want to be perceived as irreplaceable. And what do I have that is unique to these people, and why should they need me, and why should they want to interact with me? And that goes back to what you were saying about product development and business development, which is, from my point of view, the most important reason to actually do influencer marketing in the first place. I would also like to address also what Brit was saying earlier about the risk that the influencer is taking on your behalf when interacting with you. And in a sense, the greater the risk this person takes, because an influencer has power. Power is by default suspicious. And the moment you get enough traction, people start questioning your agenda and what is really behind this, and what is there money involved, which is even worse, and really assessing the risk that your influencer is taking, and perhaps it's even more valuable. The greater the risk, the more value.
Yeah, so what more should I add? I really want to remind and inspire you to look for the coming influencers, because that's so key, and that's such a wonderful relationship to develop, because you give them a platform and you build something together, and to be able to see that, and they will work together with you for a long time, because you have helped them to develop as well. What would you? I wanted to add something that you were saying. If you go, and then I because I had something more.
Okay, I'm just gonna add a word on the measurement side to finish off. One of the questions that was asked is, what should I measure? How do I measure? How do I calculate ARI? I think here there's a fairly simple answer to that, actually, is what do you want to achieve? So what are you doing this in the first place? And then you measure the impact that you're having, because if you remember what we talked about, influence is about creating impact. Okay, that's all it's about. It's creating impact. So if, for example, my objective was to have people register for an event in Stockholm, my measurement is how many people actually register and come, and what are the quality of these people. So I'm setting my measurements against that goal. Okay, so the advice is try to move away from outputs. Like, it's good to have KPIs along the way to guide you, like how many mentions, how many shares have I achieved. But let's be mindful of really what I'm trying to achieve for my company, and let's measure that. I think that's the key advice in terms of measurement. Brit, do you remember now what you wanted to say?
Otherwise, I have a question for Britta, if you don't have. How do you make people to engage? That's because you want people. First of all, you want the right people, right? Then you want them to engage with the right. Because I see in the media industry, you see people creating a lot of accounts, then they don't really engage. But what is the factor to get people engaged?
Talk to them, involve them, and if you look at the media business, for example, if you write an article today, that's only half of your job. You have to work with it before, during, and after, and then be able to involve and track the people that actually interact with that story, for example, and gives you a good insight to coming stories and perspectives, and that is easily to address to any product or service that you see. But one aspect, and maybe some of you, depending on what business you have, might find that influencer is a hard word, and maybe nobody wants to carry our message like that. But if you look at the Swedish police, for example, for them, being able to identify influencers be very important if you look at the crisis communication, for example.
Yeah.
If you need to get the information out fast, that helps you a lot to know who's the one with the greatest impact. And that is so intriguing to mentioning the police in that context, because at the same time we do know that if anybody, it's the governments and those kind of bodies that really have to talk to everybody. But if they want to get out the information fast, it's really important to start with the right people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fefe had one thing that I liked. He said it's all about context. Do you agree about it?
Context and relevance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Peter. One more question.
Great.
Last minute. That was just in time.
How do I come in contact with an influencer or a thought leader? If I want to talk to someone who's a thought leader, if I want to get in contact with someone who can help me with my brand or who can do something with my company, how would I do that the best way?
You answer, and I say first, never underestimate the power of the digital handshake. See them, talk to them, and tell them why you think they are interesting to you. Be very clear about that. And then you wanted to say.
I think one of the someone that we work with in the US on that topic. It's a big topic. And a topic that brands really struggle with. So engagement. I encourage you to look at on our blog. There's a whole lot of series about called the Engagers. How do you engage with people? So it's complicated. And one of them was saying, you're not gonna, ask someone to marry you on your first date. Okay, and so you have to build that relationship over time. And what she says, you have to give, and get, maybe. All right. So, and I think that says a lot about maybe the etiquette, the influencer etiquette.
I think we write about it a lot in DagensAnalys, and the thing is that you have to interact. It's not a push media. Anytime somebody likes, you should thank them. You should, as soon as you see people, they start spreading the word more and more. But it's not a push media. You can never put out anything on social media and not respond on it. That's like a biggest no-no.
All right. I think it's time. Thank you very much. I think we have, before the final roundup, Sam, can you give us the results?
So, all changed in the second half.
All changed.
All bets are off. So, Christina dropped off the leaderboard completely.
Christina, what happened? No more battery.
Ola maintained his dominance, pretty solid throughout. We had a new entry from Oliver Lopez.
Oliver?
But our winner, brand new entry, and I will say the Twitter handle, because I'm not quite sure how you pronounce the first name. It's Web Redactoren.
Hey!
Congratulations.
What is your name? Well, you have an hour together to try to pronounce each other's names. Well, thank you, everyone. I'd like to thank the speakers who made up time for this and share these great insights. I'd like to thank you all for joining us tonight. I hope you enjoyed your time. You found it useful. Please join us for drinks afterwards. I'd like to thank also our video team here. Did a great job. Kim and Jacqueline. And UnitedSpaces for their support. And again, special thank to Delphine, who's not here today, but made all this possible. Have a good evening.